So with us today, we've got a pretty amazing set of panelists, four individual speakers on the topic. The topic, I'll go ahead and start with a summary of a kind of building our case for change. So the pandemic, as we all know, has been accelerating a shift towards greater flexibility and choice of workplace by top talent, where people live, where people work. These decisions are more flexible now than they were in the past. And the pandemic has merely accelerated recent shifts towards this. Disruptions that we're seeing now in the commercial real estate industry due to co-working, and the whole world is asking because of the pandemic is what is the future of work? So that and then the emerging technologies are presenting us an opportunity to innovate and offering a challenge to all of us real estate workers to evolve beyond just simply the office into a reimagined world of work. How can we truly empower and address our individual health, wellness, business, social, and environmental needs through an interconnected ecosystem, which we have broken into home, spoke, hub, and district workplaces. So today with us, we have four speakers. We have Kate Lister, who is the president of Global Workplace Analytics, a research and consulting firm that helps their employers understand and prepare for that future of work. Her expertise is focused on where workplace, workforce, technology, and other trends that are changing the who, the what, the when, and the where, and the how of work, helping both public and private sectors. Kay Sargent is the director of HOK's Global Workplace Practice. She collaborates with organizations ranging from tech startups to Fortune 500 companies to help optimize the real estate portfolios and create the most innovative work experiences. She's based in Washington, D.C. Kate Wittels is a partner at HR&A Advisors in New York. She advises governments, developers, and businesses on leveraging technology and forging the connections to create districts, workforces, and economies that are ready for the future. Kate specializes in creating strategic plans, public-private partnerships, public policies and programs to grow technology and innovation ecosystems in cities, both across the US and the world. And then there's myself, Rae Smith. I work at HOK as a senior urban designer and planner, and am a registered architect and a planner. So I often help with corporate and university campuses, innovation district, mixed use, waterfront, or transit-oriented developments move through today's complex real estate challenges. Some of the research that I've done is into these changing technologies, including autonomous vehicles, which I've spoken about at Urbanism Next before. But how can they really positively affect community health, access, and equity, right? How can we use these disruptive changes to change the dial in urbanism and reclaim our cities and our streets for our mental, our physical, and our environmental health? So with that, I'll jump right into the presentations. I'll start out with a short intro and then pass it along to Kate Wittels and Kate Lister to go through their presentations. And we'll have a Q&A at the end that I hope is very robust. We've got a couple of questions to start us all out that were prepared in advance, but we're very excited to hear from the audience. All right, so is this the new normal? In a time that's a massive disruption and scale change, it can be really difficult to just keep up with all the changes that are occurring almost each and every day, every couple of hours in our news cycle, much less know what to focus on. But just because new things keep coming up doesn't mean that some of our longstanding urban challenges or even our longstanding opportunities have gone away right now. So if it's not the new normal, it's at least the new now. Some of the things that we've seen in the news recently, we know that Pinterest just paid $90 million to terminate their lease space in San Francisco. Salesforce and SF is also backing out of their development agreements, completely disrupting the new transit center that we're building. Similar situations are occurring in Seattle, where something at the height of COVID, like 9 out of 10 desks were empty and in New York, where offices up for sublease are increased by about 50%. So all of our cities are seeing this. We know that our world and our work is going to change going forward. The COVID crisis has accelerated a transformation of work life that has been nearly decades in the making. That, coupled with a near total digitization of many of our workplace activities, has made working remote a feasible option that, if employees were willing to explore earlier, now their employers are also willing to explore. In a nationwide survey of employers, now we know that about 94% have reported that work from home has not decreased our productivity. In fact, as many employers might have guessed right before the pandemic hit, instead, nearly a quarter said that productivity had improved, and nearly half of employees are expected to work from home at least some portion of the time, even after it's safe to return to the office. So that's a big impact. What does this mean for our cities? Unfortunately, the COVID crisis has moved us temporarily backwards in some ways. There's now a press to rely on single occupant vehicles in a way that we weren't seeing before the pandemic. Transit remains underutilized right now. And without the efficiencies gained from the transportation infrastructure that our cities have built, congestion rates and greenhouse gas emissions are already back to nearly pre-COVID levels. The rents in our cities have dipped, commercial rents, and with that is the interest and the means for folks, or people with the interest and the means to leave individuals for residential tenants to find more square footage, more yard space, and more social distancing in their lives. However, we've already moved forward in some really key and important ways. More people are interested in walk and bike commuting. More folks are interested in telecommuting and employers and flexible hours, prompting companies now to consider hybrid approaches to their work models. Partial work from home, partial work from elsewhere, partial work from eventually back when we return to the office part-time. So a conversation about mental health and equity has now popped up in many offices and workplaces. I know HOK is discussing it both internally and in external forums. And that dialogue was needed even before COVID, and hopefully it won't go away anytime soon. So while we're starting to see a pendulum shift, reducing energy, water, and waste directly impacts the health of our communities. And this is at least my personal goal when I'm researching these topics. It's particularly important for our underserved communities, which are most typically adjacent to more polluted air, transportation, and waterways. The changes that the pandemic brought can help nudge us towards a more equitable, healthy direction. These could be really large, immense changes. The opportunity here is that all cities have to rethink from the ground up many of our planning and development assumptions. I think I heard a quote the other day that said that whatever a mayor's agenda was for the year 2020 completely went out the window with COVID right on top, replacing it. And that was the first time, I think, in current American history when we saw such a radical shift and realignment of priorities among leadership of urban areas. So as the needs for office in particular start to shrink, the resulting land use and transportation shifts that we'll see will help us free up new opportunities to address urban problems in some of our core cities. However, while a lot of the great work has gone into this turning the ship to date, has been focused on the environmental impact of the built world without fully addressing maybe the human reconnection to our world and natural world, which is a dialogue that's coming up more readily now. So it would be interesting, and I think that we'll start to see real estate starts to apply some of the disruption opportunities to create change in our workplace and real life towards building human resilience and emotional well-being. More attention than ever is being paid to healthier lifestyles within a working environment. As we build our way out of the pandemic, opportunities for movement and active design and transportation increase in our workplaces. And then as people spend more time at home, the need for the diversity of the range of services offered within a short walk from your house is going to increase, leading to a need to kind of rethink our single-use zoning, which we're already seeing in cities like Sacramento and San Francisco, and a couple of others across the country. So in sum, the pandemic overall is providing us with an opportunity to no longer just design our environments, but to design our human experiences. So with that, I'll introduce Kay to talk about reimagining the workplace.
So good morning to everyone on the West Coast. So I'm going to chat a little bit about what we are seeing as far as this emerging ecosystem of spaces. And so we really have done a tremendous amount of research on that topic about what do we think is coming, what is happening. And Ray, you can go to the next slide, please. And what we think is coming down the line. And we would start by saying that disruption has really caused industry after industry to evolve. If you think about what Amazon has done to the retail industry, or the hotel sector has been rocked by Airbnb, or the transportation sector has been really disrupted by Uber and Lyft. But now really is a time for the real estate industry. And we'd already started to see some disruption with co-working, but really we now have the entire world asking a very, very fundamental question, and that is, what is the future of work? And what is coming down the line as we evolve? So the notion of returning to the office, which is a lot of people are talking about, we believe is actually a flawed concept. In fact, if I could get rid of the word office altogether, I would, because I think it's a very antiquated term. I think what we're seeing right now is this emerging ecosystem of spaces. And we need to really start thinking about and embracing, quite frankly, what has organically been happening for the last 20 years. You know, work from home is not really new. There have been people that have been doing it since the 1980s. And it really started picking up steam in the 90s. But there are a lot of people that really have kind of worked in this distributed manner over the course of the years. And so we need to think about where we need to go. And I think in the beginning of this crisis, we had a lot of people that had a knee-jerk reaction to what was going on. And we were very adamant about the fact that we're in the middle of an evolving crisis. We are still in an evolving crisis, and that we need to be very systematic about going forward. And right now, we have to be really honest. And this is coming from someone who designs workplaces. So what I'm about to say should not be taken lightly. We have not, as an industry, as a country, as a society, as a global consortium, we have not done a good job of really creating spaces that really help everybody thrive. And so we want to be brutally honest with ourselves. We need to think about the fact that before COVID, stress, burnout, and well-being were at an all-time, stress and burnout were at an all-time high, well-being was low. That we weren't really dealing with climate change or environmental sustainability. Too many people were kind of checking the boxes and saying, okay, I did the bare minimum, I'm good. We had a lot of real estate that was underutilized or totally inflexible. And I think a lot of people have realized how inflexible that has been over the last year. We have social inequity. We've got an issue with cleanliness. And by the way, that's always been there. We're just paying attention to it more and more now. We have an emerging liquid workforce. We really need to start thinking about retraining or upskilling that workforce. We have so many people that are talking about productivity, but we really need to think about innovation and how do companies even innovate fast enough to be relevant is one of the things that before COVID was keeping CEOs up at night. It's not about creating the same thing faster. It's about changing the game, right? And all those companies that I cited as examples where disruption has happened, they didn't do the same thing faster. They changed the game and they did it in a different way. They innovated and they evolved. And that's what we really need to focus a lot on. We need to think about our social connections because we are social creatures, and loneliness and mental health issues have really become a big issue as we've been in isolation. And we also were really struggling before COVID with the rapid evolution of technology, and it is not slowing down. It is continuing to go forward. So anything that we do going forward, we need to understand that we need to address all of these issues on top of the new challenges that COVID really has brought to the table and is introducing to all of us today. So what are companies talking about and what is keeping them up at night? Well, there are really 5 big issues that most organizations are grappling with today. The first is health, safety, and well-being. If that was not the #1 issue, we'd all be sitting in the workplace right next to each other. The second one is really about remote work. And first of all, how do we do it? And then how do we sustain it? And then what does that mean for the place? Do we even still need workplaces? And or what is the natural evolution of the purpose of place? And how do we ensure that our businesses are being resilient and we're having continuity? And how are we addressing those environmental, social, and governance issues? So when we're talking to our clients, those are the things that are really top of mind that are critical to addressing their business needs as they go forward. So in our research, we found 7 key findings that I'll share with you now. And the first one really is that the office that we knew, the office of yesterday, and returning to that is not the answer. We need to go forward, and we need to go forward to a positive environment. That we need to create a new system and kind of replace the office with this emerging ecosystem of spaces. That we need to empower people with options and choices, not just within an environment, but even which environment they go to. That we need to shift from everything being very, very fixed to being more fluid so we create environments that people can really, truly thrive in. That we really need to rethink the purpose of place and create compelling enough environments that people want to be in and is actually enticing them to want to come to those spaces. That we need to think about access being the new ownership. We don't all need to have our own gym and all need to have our own conference center. Maybe we can tap into one that's really done in an amazing way in our building or in a precinct or in a community. And therefore you can leverage the best without necessarily having to own it. And we also need to think about how do we leverage technology going forward? I mean, let's just be honest. Most of us have a better experience in our car electronically than we do in our workplaces. And it's easier to get into an airport than it is to get into most office buildings. So we have a long way and a lot of things that we can really do to improve and put more control in the hands of the users as we go forward. And so with this, what we really start to see is this reimagined ecosystem of spaces that consists of kind of this hub, home, spoke model. And that can vary depending on the type of company or the type of organization that you are. And so we all know that people have been working from home, and that's great for some people. Just because you can work from home doesn't necessarily mean that you should. And not everybody wants to do that or has been successful in doing that. But it's good to have those options and empower people with those choices. Then you kind of have the spoke model. And the spoke is really those in-between places. It might be a co-working space. It might be an outpost for your company. It could be a Panera, a Starbucks. For me, my spokes often were airports, right? But then you have the hub, which is kind of the physical embodiment of the company. It's where the gathering might be, where you're coming together to connect with your colleagues. And so all 3 of these together really create this new emerging ecosystem of spaces that we can tap into, and it empowers people with that option and that choice that enables them really to find the right types of spaces for them. So I want to talk about the hub for just a minute, because people say, okay, well, what is the old office or what we're calling now the hub? What is that? And what is it? So if we design it like we did in the past, and it really is kind of one size fits all, and there's nothing special about it, what is enticing enough that makes me want to go there? So we need to really think about, what are you missing? What can't you get at home? Well, it could be access to coworkers. It could be amazing ergonomics, state-of-the-art technology, podcast rooms, specialty spaces, lab spaces. It could just be an escape from, the dog, the cat, the kids. It could be a space that you just want to be in an area with energy. And so what we're really starting to see is kind of this emerging kit of parts that's a little bit different. And the office will be different. The entry to the office needs to be different. The gathering areas within offices need to be different. We'll probably have more specialty type of areas within those spaces, and also just access to outdoor space as well is really, really critical. So those are really kind of the components that we see as we go forward. And I'm going to turn it over to Kate to talk a little bit more about the work from anywhere economy. So over to you, Kate.
Thank you, Kay, and good morning, everyone. So if we think about, and Ray, you can go to the next slide. If we think about what Kay has been talking about in terms of how the workplace is changing, we know that when the health conditions change, we're going to have this work from anywhere world where we'll have choice as to where we want to work. But we do know that we may work from home, we may work from an airport, but we'll need to have choices. And we do know that those choices, those locations, really still will be talent driven, right? A business, whether they have a single location or they have a disrupted work environment, they want to ensure that their talent has the tools to produce the business, right? And so investing either in the fixed location, in the hub office, or investing in technology and allowing for talent to work in the locations they want to work in to be most productive and most efficient and producing of the target of the business will still be a goal of business leaders. But with choice means that we want to be able to go somewhere that is desirable. We need a reason to leave our comfy chair. It may be just that we can't stare at the same wall over and over and over again. But we need to have a reason to leave our homes or to leave the coffee shop, a reason to take that commute and go in. If you want to go to the next slide, right? And really, you know, thinking through, there is still going to be a role of the office. I do not believe the office is dead. It just will be part of a collection of workspaces, right? When we think about before, you know, work production, meetings, culture, talent attraction, and client engagement all happened in an office environment. And that's why we were justifying why we needed an office environment. With this experiment, this forced experiment of COVID, we've all found that we are able to produce work, and we're able to have recurring meetings with people that we know. But what has been hard, and I think what will continue to be hard unless we figure out how to come together in certain instances, is really cultivating brand, mentorship, talent attraction, and client engagement. And we really believe that decisions about why to have an office, where to have an office, when people go to an office, what it looks like, will really be based on goals about brand development, culture development, what my talent wants. Office could be a benefit now that some people get, and what clients want to see when they want to decide to spend money with you. If you go to the next slide. So as Kay said, and I think we all are in agreement, past was you work from office. Today, you work from home with your children popping in on screens. And in the future, we're going to be working in a number of places, and we'll have choices of where those are. If you go to the next slide, okay. If you think about a week, you may work at your home in the suburbs on Monday. You may work at a co-working facility in your neighborhood on Tuesday. You go in on Wednesday because there are critical meetings that you want to be in person with. You want to mentor some staff and the like, and that's really dedicated Wednesday and Thursday. And then Friday, you're working in a number of different locations. You're going to be in an airport lounge, in the plane, and in the hotel. I mean, I personally miss the airplane where I used to get most of my work done. And so I think we'll still be doing that going forward. And that's really the work from anywhere world that we are envisioning. If you go to the next slide, we know even pre-COVID that talent attraction is really where, how companies decided where to locate. And we knew that talent, even pre-COVID, did want amenities, did want flexible work. And so these are just going to be even more important when you do have that hub, really thinking about what are you offering in the workplace? What is the landlord offering in the work building? What is the neighborhood where the office is located offering? Those are all amenities and all reasons why people will choose to go to an office when they have choice. If you go to the next slide. We also know that creating these collaborative work environments where businesses are able to interact with each other and meet each other helps businesses grow and thrive. Cambridge Innovation Center, which is a very well-known incubator and co-working facility in Boston and St. Louis and Philadelphia, their companies were really able to thrive because of the environment. When we look at all member businesses of WeWork, new businesses that were found in WeWork are able to stay in business longer. They were staying in business longer than businesses located outside of a co-working environment. So just the resources that are provided by these collaborative spaces do help businesses grow and thrive. And so those will continue to be offered going forward. If you go to the next slide. So landlords really need to think about, what are the things that I have to offer? It's no longer about just building the bricks and sticks and having some beautiful furniture in the lobby. Really, baseline requirements are really supporting digital infrastructure, having Zoom rooms and other sorts of ways of really best-in-class technology, really making this an experience. Why is someone coming to my building? Why is this business choosing my building? But I believe that they're going to have to go further, and some are starting to. I believe incubators and accelerators and co-working facilities are going to be in many office buildings going forward, and it's going to be kind of an amenity that you look for when you're choosing. I also believe, and we're seeing this, that landlords are going to start getting the business of flexible furnishing and short-term leases, and also other services that they can provide to businesses to reduce business costs and improve business efficiency. If you go to the next slide, landlords are really going to have to decide: do I create these new services in-house? Do I, and increase my expenses, or do I outsource it and partner? And it's really going to differentiate between whether you're a single building owner and you can deliver that, or you can spread those costs across your district or across your portfolio. And these are really decisions that landlords are thinking about today. And in addition, Rae, if you go to the next slide, landlords really have expanded competition. They're no longer the neighbor next door. They're competing with residential, they're competing with retail, and they really have to think about all of the new amenities they're going to have to be providing. This is also an opportunity for retail and hotel to really reposition themselves and capture more of that work from anywhere activity. And finally, businesses, office tenants are going to want more data on where is the best place for people to work. How can I ensure that they're having the best work experience, whether it's in the environment that I control of my office, or whether it's in their home or the place that the worker chooses to work? How do I ensure that that is the best experience possible so they can be as most productive? And those, I think, are going to be really essential as we move forward, as we leave as we're allowed to leave our homes and re-enter into this work from anywhere world. So with that, I'm going to hand that over to Kate Lister, who is going to talk about how we are working remotely.
Hi there. Go to the next slide, if you will. Right. One of the reasons I think that so many people say they want to work from home is because we've made the working environment so horrible or failed to provide them with great working environments. And, this isn't everybody, but it's certainly a large portion of the workforce. But as others have said, the genie is out of the bottle, and really that changes everything. Next slide. It changes the who, the when, the why, the what, the how of work. And so I want to go through kind of each one of those things individually. In most cases, it's not going to be transformational. These were changes that were already underway in a lot of situations. Next slide. So in terms of the who, the ability to for a significant portion of the workforce to work from home will allow organizations to better diversify. We're already hearing talent directors looking to that opportunity, and it'll diversify across age, across life stage, geography, and more. And it'll open up new opportunities. It'll expand the workforce to include people that otherwise were either or underemployed, the disabled, military spouses, the neurodiverse. At the same time, it'll challenge employers to create a level playing field for those who can't work remotely and to better accommodate the needs of caregivers. We've seen that they have really suffered through this, and we need to be cognizant of how do we make their lives better? How do we make it more inclusive for caregivers as well? Another of the trends that the pandemic is accelerating is greater use of contractors, gig workers, and freelance. So the who of work is going to be dramatically changing over the next several years. Next slide. So the what of work changed many decades ago, but as I said, our offices, our work practices, our work processes have changed little since the days of sweatshops and typing pools. We now live in a time where it's brains, not brawn, that are what defines success. And if organizations want to maximize the effectiveness of those brains, they'll need to embrace what science tells us about health, well-being, satisfaction, motivation, and more. Next slide. The research has long shown that the ability to shift when people work is even more important than where. Many, particularly those in early stages of adult life, are looking for more of a work-life blend than a rigid separation. They want to earn a living, but not at the expense of having a life. I think we all want that. Young parents need to work around their family responsibilities. Mid-career workers are increasingly faced with elder care responsibilities. And those nearing or past retirement age may want to or need to continue working, but they can't always do it in the same way that they've been doing it, and they may not want to. There's also the reality that most people, or some people, may prefer to work in the wee hours of the morning or the late hours of night. And we're all very different. The fact is, we're actually better in sprints than we are in marathons. So whoever dreamed up the 9 to 5 sitting in front of a computer, I guess not computer, but doing the same thing from 9 to 5, it's just a flawed concept. And I think we're finally realizing that. So if employers want to get their best out of their people, they have to reconsider not only the where of work, but the when of work. Next slide. We've talked about this. Obviously, the where of work changes, and this is just another image of that ecosystem that both Kay and Kate talked about. By the way, we didn't plan having 3 Ks on the call here. For the most part, it won't be any one space. It'll be that ecosystem working in an environment that's most conducive to whatever it is that you're doing right now. The office they left is not the office they're coming back to. Every one of my clients, all of the companies that I'm talking to, are moving more toward less me space and more we space. But I think we have to remember that even at the office, we need some me space. We can't put them all in one big room and expect them to succeed. We've got to embrace activity-based working and give people across the spectrum the kinds of places that they need to be successful. We're also seeing less assigned seating. Again, this is another trend that had already started to occur, and more free address. And it worries me, to be honest with you, because I'm seeing some companies just say, okay, we're going to come back and nobody's going to have an assigned space. That's a big, big change. And without change management and without proper planning, it really could backfire. Some cities are going to be hit harder than others as more and more people work remotely. And so will the local businesses based there. So that's something else that we need to talk about, and we'll maybe consider that next. Next slide. This is how my dog looks at me when I ask him to do something without a cookie in my hand. Why should I? Many of us have spent the last year working flexibly, and we're asking ourselves the same question about the office. If organizations want people to come in, they've got to make it worth my while. If they want people to do their best, regardless of where they are, they need to engage both their minds and their hearts in what the organization stands for, its values and its purpose. And it's something that we've seen during the pandemic has kind of been more difficult. You walk into the office and there's this big panel TV that shows the wonderful things that you're doing for the community. We don't have that in this kind of static environment. So that's something that I think the office, the design of the office really needs to center on, needs to focus on. Next slide. And finally, there's the how of work. In an age of consumerization of everything, the best they've experienced is the least they'll expect, right? So you're not going to take a crummy old cell phone when you're used to your iPhone 12. You're not going to survive in a noisy, crowded, uncomfortable workspace. You're not going to survive. You're not going to be happy with an ancient tech stack, with outdated work processes and work practices, with micromanagement. We need to learn to work smarter, not harder. The latter is just unsustainable. We've been doing it. We've been taxed to do it tremendously over the last year. It's just not sustainable. So in the words of Winston Churchill, the pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity. The optimist sees opportunity in every difficulty. And I think this is our opportunity to fundamentally change the who, what, when, where, and how of work in a way that's actually better for employers, employees, the environment, and society. And with that, back to you, Rae.
Thank you, Kate. Okay, so we're at the end of our formal presentation. So I'm going to turn off the screen share, and then I've got a series of questions to ask, and then I'd like to take some of the audience questions as well to start a discussion for the second half of our presentation here. Okay. Maybe to start us out, some of our questions that we've developed here are going to start to probe at some of those big bucket topics, things like equity, environmental health, mental well-being, looking at the future, what about innovation. So I'll go down our list, and then we'll see if we have any audience Q&A also. So starting off, to pull us back to our environmental and physical health, we've seen a drop in our initial drop in our greenhouse gas emissions as cities slowed down, but even without fully office and school opening, we're now back up to just about pre-COVID levels with those emissions. Questions for the panelists is, can a distributed workforce actually help to reduce our carbon footprint and our environmental and our physical health?
I have to tell you, I'm really concerned about this. I am waiting for the day for somebody to say, yeah, all of our cars are off the road, but look at how many delivery trucks are on the road now, and how many, Uber Eats drivers, et cetera, are on the road now. And the number of cardboard boxes, before I would go to the grocery store and I wouldn't even get a paper bag. I'd bring my own, reusable bags. Now we're having onesies and twosies delivered to our houses in boxes with excessive packaging by cars that are driving each thing individually to your house, right? And so that is not sustainable at all. We need to think about a better way to do that. And so I think the other thing we need to realize is most office buildings, you don't just shut down the whole office building, right? You can't. They're still on. But now we're also in our houses. I don't know about you guys, but the wear and tear on my house in the last year is just like gone off the charts, right? And we're using more electricity in our house because we are here more, but the electricity in our office, in many cases is still on. So we're going to have to figure out a better way to balance this. And in many cases, unfortunately, our home environments are not as sustainable as the commercial office buildings. And I think there's going to be a huge push in the coming years about making our homes and residences more energy efficient and sustainable if we really are going to be leveraging them to a higher percentage of time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, Kay. I mean, I think if you think about landlords spent a lot of time and effort in building sustainable buildings, getting LEED certified, and that helped people function in a sustainable way when they were in the office. We had controlled behavior a lot more. And now that we are dispersed, we don't have that centralization kind of controlling how we are living in a sustainable way. And we all either need to adopt change, which we know is difficult, or we need to have some controls on ourselves so that we do have some more better outcomes in terms of sustainability.
On a positive note, though, I think we saw what's possible when we saw the huge dips in pollution early on. But I think we need to follow up with new practices. So, instead of ordering that tube of toothpaste as a one-off on Amazon, wait until you've got a number of things together. And instead of going out to the store for one trip, chain your trips so that you're making more effective use of the drive and having to actually drive, less.
Yeah, agreed. Right now, they're trying to get it to us as fast as possible. I'd rather they wait and have this limited number of trips. And I really wish there was a button that I could click that and say, don't deliver my toothpaste separately from my shampoo. Like, stop doing that, right?
Yeah.
Like, just, I'll wait a day.
Yeah.
You know, I'm
there
good.
is, I'll tell you. Amazon has that now.
Well, see, I got to get on that, Kate. Thank you.
Get with the program.
I will. Clearly, I'm not.
All right, that was great. Okay, second question. Let's put the focus back on equity. This is one of our national conversations right now. The promise of our cities is anchored in its density and its diversity of people and experiences. So how can urbanists and either government and private industries or nonprofits work together to ensure that our cities continue to thrive and support equitable solutions within this new work from anywhere working ecosystem?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in first. I mean, I think there's a benefit to this hub and spoke model in terms of control of your life, but you're not going to be exposed to as many people. When you travel from your home to your office, you do get exposed to different lifestyles. You get exposed to different types of people, and people can see alternative ways of living or alternative opportunities in terms of how to do your job or how to aspire to do another job. And if we do live in these kind of 15-minute neighborhoods, we are going to become more segregated, more isolated. And I really worry about the benefits that urbanity has brought us to try to break down. We're going to be in a worse place than we even are right now. So I think pushing and promoting us to come together to just be exposed to each other is extremely important as we move forward to tackling the equity issues that we already have.
Good answer. I think we should let that stand because we're getting some good questions in the Q&A. So let's keep going with the other questions.
All right, this one's related to one of the Q&A questions. It's about, as we're moving to the work from anywhere model, as our central business districts evolve, how can landlords start to share offices and amenities within a district? Will the burden of providing an office shift from an employer to an individual in terms of the likely impact and the amount of real estate that companies need to hold for office purposes?
If I've learned something from my kids in this period of time, it's why would I want to own anything, right? Like, why do I want to own a car if I can just take an Uber, and why do I want to deal with that? And why do I want to own a house if, everything is whatever. And so if I take that, and there are benefits to all of those things, right? But if I take this to the extreme, why does everybody want to own it? Right? Why do I need 20 tricked out conference rooms in the same office building that the technology ages out and none of them work well and they're kind of right? We're spending a whole lot of money to create spaces that are usually underutilized. I would rather have one amazing conference center in the building and or even in the precinct. We need to start thinking about communities. We got to stop we got to get out of this siloed mentality of my building and my conference center and my space. And we need to start thinking about how it would be so much better if we had an amazing conference center that we could all tap into, that was maybe run by somebody else, had amazing food, guest services, all those things. It would be a great place that I would want to go to, and they control the technology and they can keep it up to date. And then I pay for what I need when I need it versus having to have my own space that's okay, right? And gets out of date. And so I think we're going to start seeing, just like, food, shared gyms, shared conferencing centers, shared concierge services, ITs, and we're starting to see this in a lot of buildings, right, where they're creating this. And there are even precincts, like if you go down to Australia, the Barangaroo complex, or in London, there are many districts that are really around multiple companies, and it allows people to mingle, to collaborate, to get outside, to move. I mean, the benefits just keep going on and on and on. And I think that we need to start breaking those silos down and thinking as a group.
Yeah, Joshua, that same question asks about the pushing the burden onto the individual of providing their own space. I think what's going to shake out is that the employer is going to take responsibility for equipping people with the things that they need to be successful. I mean, that's in their best interest. There's nothing altruistic about it. And so if sitting in a chair that makes my back hurt causes my productivity to go down and my performance to go down and my healthcare bills to go up, it's workers' comp claims to go up, it's going to push employers over the edge to start thinking about things and start taking care of those things. I mean, I calculated that I'm a former banker and I calculate everything, that a company could buy 300 ergonomic chairs for the cost of one workers' comp claim, if in their best interest. On the other hand, I think employees need to realize that they're saving money too. And so there's this balance, I think, that we'll come to.
Kate, I think it's interesting, though, that they may not have a choice, right? So there was a recent survey, and the survey came out and said that 80% of companies felt like if their employees continued to work from home, that they had some obligation to provide a more appropriate setting for them. And so we are starting to see a lot of our clients, and clients that have done this for a long time, that give stipends. And the stipend is usually $500 to $1,200 an employee, and it can be used for an ergonomic chair, a work point, a stand-up desk, better internet connection, whatever it might be, because different people are in different scenarios and have different levels of things that they might need. But it is also starting to become part of the law. So in Europe right now, the big debate is if you're going to require people to work from home, you should be paying part of their rent or lease. And Deutsche Bank just came out with a recommendation that said, think about the impact to our cities if people aren't going downtown as much, and the businesses and everything else that feeds this economy. And so they made a recommendation that for any company that has somebody who is working remotely predominantly, that 5% of their annual salary should be taxed, or taxed up to 5% of their annual salary, to go towards offsetting that impact to the urban community and the districts, et cetera, to help pay for that.
Yeah, there's actually 14 US states that require that you reimburse employees for any work-related expense, and that it has been interpreted to include home office, electricity, cell phone, internet, all of those things. All this stuff is, I mean, it's really difficult to be an employer with a lot of employees working in different states, because there's tax and there's DOL and there's all kinds of things that we really haven't come to grips with yet.
Yeah, and you can save money. An employer can save money when their employees are not coming to the office if, this is a huge if they can get rid of the square footage, right? Like if somebody still has an assigned desk and you have to save that square footage for them, and the lights and everything else, you're not reducing your portfolio, you're not really saving that money, right? And so if you own all your property, or if you've just signed up, renewed all your leases and you can't get rid of the square footage, or if the ebb and flow, you can't monitor or that, it can really be a problem. And so it is not an equal trade-off. If 50% of your people decided they were never coming in, you could not reduce your space by 50%, right? It's just not, you have to, there's a little bit of an overlap when you need to think about those things.
And we calculate that a typical employer can save about $11,000 per half-time remote worker per year.
if they can get rid of the space.
That assumes some real estate savings, but the bigger saving comes in terms of increased productivity that all of the studies have pointed to over the years, reduced absenteeism that all of the studies have pointed to, and reduced turnover, although I'm not sure that one's going to hold when pretty much everybody offers.
Everybody does
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Kate, you know, I think the other thing that's really interesting about the productivity thing, and we could go on for hours and hours about this one, but I promise I won't. You know, one of the things I think that people are forgetting is that part of that increased productivity comes off the back of the fact that the average person that is working from home works 1 to 3 hours a day, not a week, a day longer. And that means that a lot of them are sitting stagnantly in one place, and it's starting to take a physical and mental toll on people. And so, you know, every study has always shown people working from home tend to work longer and or harder and be more productive. I think it's some of those other things that we benefit from, maybe you know, making sure everybody, exactly. And I love, you said something earlier that I love. Somebody once said, we should all work like athletes, not like marathoners, right? 90-minute sprints. 90 minutes is what any athlete does, and then they take a break because you just can't train beyond that. If we work like athletes, we'd all be better off.
Yep.
That's a good point about employee productivity and how it's increased. What about the other component, kind of the measuring stick of employment, which is innovation? Innovation being one of the core offerings of our cities. You know, it's where ideas come together. Has innovation been impacted by remote work? Would a hybrid approach help with innovation? And is it possible with remote work to start to foster that culture of belonging, inspiration, and teamwork that innovation requires?
I mean, I think it's twofold, right? There are new technologies that can help us collaborate more. We've found better ways to collaborate more virtually, from when we were working in March to this March. But I think, you know, inspiration and engaging with people that you didn't know before happen when you travel. Happen when you leave your home, or you see something new. You have a different type of experience, right? Like, think about all the ideas that you may think of as you're driving to work, or sitting in that subway car, or riding in the elevator, or bumping into someone at the coffee stand. That is essential, and we've seen that be essential for collaborative spaces, are helping businesses to grow, or helping them to create more inventions. And so we're going to need that. I think we're also going to, as humans, desire that in some form. It's not going to be 5 days a week, but we're going to desire it.
Social capital.
Yeah, I think we need to follow the science too. And it says that there's two parts to innovation. One is creativity and the other one is innovation. And in fact, we're more creative when we're alone, and ideas are best vetted in groups. So I think we need to maximize the potential for both of those kinds of activities. I mean, think about it, the shower, right? The car. Those are the places where we are more creative.
And I actually am going to challenge a notion here, right? So everybody says what should be done remotely, what should be done on site. I'm going to challenge the notion that it's an either or binary. What studies have shown is people tend to connect with people, be the most engaged and the most happy when they have options and choices, and when they have some control over their schedule. And it's the people that always work remotely that are the least engaged, and the people that always work in the office that are the second least engaged. And the people that make a point of connecting with people and really thrive when they can work from home are the ones that do it in a balance, right? All of one thing and none of the other is a bad solution. And so what we need to embrace is this ecosystem. And there are days I'm going to go in because we're going to flush out that great idea that I came up with in the shower yesterday, or, you know, whatever. And I'm going to really appreciate that I get to see you, because I only see you 2 or 3 times a week. So I'm going to maximize that time. But then when I'm home, I'm going to appreciate the fact that I don't have to commute, and I'm going to dive in and I'm going to focus my work. That is when it's that balance that's really, really important.
I agree. And we have to stop this culture of overworking. You alluded to it earlier. It's not sustainable. It's not good for us. It doesn't make us more productive. And particularly in the US, well, I guess in a lot of places, we have this bragging rights almost. Oh, I worked 14 hours yesterday. Darren Murphy at GitLab. I mean, they've got a culture where I don't want to hear that because that's really bad for you. And
it's very American, very Japanese.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Japanese too.
Yeah.
You know, it's a sickness, and it's a cultural thing, and we've got to get over that sickness. We really have to understand the science, believe the science. We don't work well at, 10, 12, 10-hour days.
Yeah. I think we need design to help us do that, right? Like if your desk is in your bedroom, you're going to work longer, you're going to be thinking about it all the time. And so having a solution where design is forcing us to have separation, whether that's in a residential building that has a co-working floor or another, a second bedroom that becomes your office. But I think humans need help. Otherwise, we're going to keep working hard and harder.
Yeah, and managing to enforce that. I mean, I've got to.
Yes.
It's about protocols too. I've heard of people that go out and get in the car and drive around the block and park in front of their house again, just to say, okay, that's it.
Right.
That's the end of this, and this is the beginning of that.
Hey, Tristan put a great thing in the comments about, we need to stop assuming that everybody that works from home has a place to work from home. Tristan, exactly. I cannot agree with you more. And I will say that the majority of conversations that I've had, everybody looks at this from their individual perspective. I am very fortunate to have a well-established network, to have kind of tenure in my career, and to have a house that I can work in with great internet. But the studies are showing that the younger generation has shown that they don't feel like they've been as productive as some of the older generation because they might be living in their parents' basement or have multiple roommates or young kids, or they don't have great internet. And quite frankly, for some people, being at home isn't safe. It's not safe. They don't have access to things. And so I agree with you. We need to stop assuming that it is a viable solution for everyone. And we also need to stop assuming that everybody has an office that they can go to. There are a lot of people that home is their only office because they're entrepreneurs, sole practitioners, they work remotely, so co-working or those type of spaces might be an option for them as spokes.
And that goes back to choice. I mean, we want choice. We need choice.
All right, Rae, any other good questions that we got coming in?
Yeah, I think we're probably right at the end here. So what we might do is skip to our last question, because I think we did just build on Dylan's particular question there about increased workplace flexibility for suburban environments and equitable access to infrastructure at home. So thank you for addressing that, Kay. But let's talk about well-being and then looking to the future. How are employers dealing with the toll of the pandemic on talking about and acting upon employee health measures? And then looking to the future, what do we each see as the lasting impact on workplace as a result of the pandemic?
I'm going to say I think there are a lot of really good ones. And I think we all know about the good ones. So I'm not going to talk about all the good ones. Sorry. I'm going to tell you what I'm worried about right now. And again, this is coming from someone who designs offices for a living. I am worried about people going back to the office and going back to environments that have been super sanitized and everything's been put away and there's tons of signage and there's X marks on chairs and stuff like that. All that does is scream danger, danger, danger. And what we found is that people are returning to those environments and they're either eerily quiet because people aren't there, or there's warning signs everywhere, and it freaks them out so much that they don't want to be there. And we need to think about the psychological toll that this is taking. And we need to understand that everybody is going to have a heightened sensitivity when they go back. And preparing the people for the return to work is going to be much harder than preparing the workplace for the return of the people. And we need to be very conscientious about creating compelling spaces that people actually want to be in, they feel safe in, they're lively but not dangerous, and they don't have warning signs all over the place that are just constantly freaking everybody out. So I think we just, you can go too far in one direction and have an adverse effect.
I think the lasting thing here is going to be empathy and seeing the person as the whole person. A lot of the stress right now, the studies that I've been reading, is actually coming from fear of job insecurity and financial fears. It's also the pandemic. It's also all of these things, but the responsibility of the manager of the organization is to make the resources available to them, to tell them it's okay, to show them it's okay in their actions, to give them the tools that they need to be successful. I think those are the things that organizations need to do to have their people feel like they're being cared for, and to communicate, not to leave them in the dark. I know companies that haven't made any claims about when people are going to come back or whether they're going to come back. Even if you don't know, communicate with your people. Tell them that you don't know. Tell them what you're thinking.